The massive starship of the Galactic Concorde hung in the darkness of space, its lights shining like 1,000 stars. Admiral Tay stood tall on the bridge, looking at the small fleet that appeared on their screens. His long fingers tapped against the control panel as he frowned. "Another primitive species," he said to Commander Hana, who stood beside him. "Not worth our time." Hana nodded, her eyes scanning the data. "Their ships are made of basic metals. They use simple fuel. No advanced shields detected." The Concorde had met hundreds of space-traveling species before. This one seemed unimpressive. Their fleet had fewer than 20 ships, all small compared to even the Concorde's smallest vessels. "Send them our standard greeting," Admiral Tay ordered, with a bored tone. "Low priority. We'll record them in our database and continue our journey." Commander Hana's screen suddenly lit up with an alert. "Admiral, they're contacting us directly. They've figured out our communication system already." Tay raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Show me." The screen in front of them changed, showing a human woman. She wore a simple but clean uniform with only a small blue planet symbol on it. "This is Captain Ji-Woo Kim of the Earth Defense Force ship Indomitable. I bring greetings from humanity to the Galactic Concorde." Tay couldn't hide his shock. "You know who we are?" Captain Kim smiled slightly. "We've been listening to your signals for some time, Admiral. We've been waiting for this meeting." Later that day, the Concorde leadership gathered to discuss the strange encounter. The conference room buzzed with different alien voices, some curious, most dismissive. "Their technology is at least 300 years behind ours," said Ko, the science officer. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he displayed the scan results. "Their weapons are basic. Their ships can barely travel faster than light. Admiral..." Tay sat at the head of the table, thinking. "Yet they decoded our communication protocols in minutes. That should have been impossible." "A lucky guess," suggested another officer. "Or perhaps they captured one of our automated probes." The door to the conference room slid open, and Captain Kim entered with 2 human officers. The room fell silent as the aliens studied these small beings. Humans were shorter than most Concorde species, with no special features, no extra limbs, no enhanced senses that could be detected. "Thank you for inviting us aboard," Captain Kim said, seemingly unaffected by the stares. "This is my science officer Minho and security chief Doyen." Admiral Tay gestured to empty seats. "Please join us. We have many questions about your species." "As we have about yours," Ji-Woo replied calmly. The meeting continued for hours. The Concorde representatives asked about Earth, human technology, their government systems. With each answer, the aliens seemed to grow more confident that humans pose no threat or particular interest to their mighty civilization. "Your world has over 200 separate governing bodies?" asked Commander Hana, clearly finding the idea inefficient. "We value diversity of thought," Minho explained. "Different approaches often lead to unexpected solutions." Admiral Tai leaned forward. "And your military? Your fleet seems limited." "We focus on quality over quantity," Doyen said with a slight smile. "Each ship serves a specific purpose." As the meeting was wrapping up, the ship's alert system suddenly activated. Red lights flashed throughout the room. "Void-borne scout ships detected in the sector," announced a voice over the communication system. The Concorde officers immediately tensed. Admiral Tay stood quickly. "We must return to the bridge. Our escorts will take you back to your vessels for safety," he told the humans. "The Void-borne are dangerous enemies of the Concorde. This is not a situation for beginners." Captain Kim stood calmly. "Actually, Admiral, we'd prefer to observe your response. We might learn from your advanced tactics." Tay hesitated, then nodded curtly. "As you wish, but stay out of the way." On the bridge, the massive view screen showed 5 organic-looking vessels approaching. They moved in strange patterns, almost like swimming creatures. "Defensive formation. Alpha," ordered Admiral Tay. "Prepare main weapons." The humans watched quietly from the side of the bridge as the Concorde crew prepared for battle. Captain Kim studied the enemy ships on the screen, her expression thoughtful. "Interesting design," she commented softly to Minho. Biomechanical. Their movement suggests a hive mind, Minho whispered back. Notice how they maintain perfect spacing without communication signals. Admiral Tay overheard them. The Voidborn are a plague on this galaxy. We've fought them for decades. Have you tried disrupting their coordination patterns? Asked Doyun. The Admiral's expression showed surprise, then dismissal. Your primitive understanding of space combat is... He was interrupted as the ship rocked violently. On the screen, one of the Concord escort vessels erupted in flames. They've adapted their weapons frequency, shouted Commander Hana. Shields at 60%. Captain Kim stepped forward. Admiral, with your permission, we'd like to return to our ships. Now? Tay asked incredulously. We're under attack. Yes, Jiwoo said, her eyes on the battle outside. That's precisely why. It seems you could use some help from our tiny fleet. The Admiral looked at the small woman, then at the battle being lost outside. For the first time, he wondered if there was more to these humans than appeared. Go, he finally said. But stay, behind our defensive line. Captain Kim nodded respectfully, but as she turned to leave with her officers, Admiral Tay noticed a look passing between them, something that might have been anticipation. Admiral Tay watched from the bridge as the small human ships broke formation and moved toward the Voidborn attackers. His jaw tightened with concern. Those fools will get themselves killed, he muttered. Prepare rescue teams. Commander Hana stood next to him, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Admiral, the human vessels are moving in an unusual pattern. The 5 human ships had spread out in what looked like a random arrangement. The indomitable Captain Kim's vessel moved directly toward the largest Voidborn ship, while the others took positions that made no tactical sense to the Concord officers. What are they doing? Asked a junior officer. Their formation leaves them completely exposed. Before Admiral Tay could respond, the human ships suddenly fired what appeared to be simple missiles. The bridge crew almost laughed at such primitive weapons. Those won't even dent the Voidborn bioarmor, said the weapons officer. But the missiles didn't hit the enemy ships. Instead, they exploded in the space between them, releasing clouds of tiny particles. As the particles spread, the Voidborn ships began to move erratically. What's happening? Admiral Tay demanded. The particles are emitting some kind of radiation, Commander Hana replied, studying her readings. It seems to be interfering with the Voidborn communication signals. On the screen, they watched as 2 enemy ships collided, their coordination completely disrupted. The human vessels took advantage of the confusion, darting between the larger ships with surprising speed and precision. Impossible, whispered Admiral Tay. Within minutes, the Voidborn fleet retreated, something the Concord had rarely witnessed. The bridge fell silent as Captain Kim's voice came through the communication system. Admiral Tay, the area is secure for now. Permission to dock and discuss what we've learned? 2 hours later, the Concord leadership and human officers gathered in the Grand Council chamber. The mood had shifted dramatically. The aliens no longer looked at the humans with amusement, but with cautious respect. Your tactics were unexpected. Admiral Tay began. How did you know the Voidborn's communication weakness? Captain Kim smiled slightly. We observed and adapted. Humans have fought countless wars against each other. We learned to look for patterns and vulnerabilities. Minho, the science officer added, we noticed the Voidborn ships moved in perfect sync like a school of fish. Such coordination requires constant communication. But your weapons, Commander Hana said, they seem so simple. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective, replied Doyun, the security chief. Your powerful energy weapons are impressive but predictable. The Voidborn have adapted to them. Admiral Tay leaned forward. Why help us? Your world is not part of the Concord. The Voidborn haven't threatened Earth. Not yet, Captain Kim said. But we understand existential threats. If the Voidborn consume more worlds, they'll eventually find Earth. The meeting was interrupted when a tall, elegant alien entered. Everyone stood immediately. This was High. Counselor Bomi, the supreme leader of the Galactic Concord. I came as soon as I heard, she said, her voice melodic but firm. These humans defeated a void-born scouting party with a handful of ships? Admiral Tay bowed. Yes, High Counselor. Their methods were unorthodox but effective. High Counselor Bomi studied the humans with 6 iridescent eyes. Interesting. Small beings from a small fleet, yet you succeeded where our battleships often fail. Size isn't everything, High Counselor, Captain Kim replied calmly. Humans evolved on a dangerous world where adaptability determined survival. Show me, Bomi commanded. The humans presented their battle recordings and explained their strategy. As they spoke, even the skeptical Concord officers began to nod with grudging approval. Your approach lacks elegance, said one alien commander. But I cannot argue with the results. High Counselor Bomi raised a hand for silence. The Voidborn have consumed 17 star systems. Countless lives lost. Our conventional tactics have failed to stop their advance. She turned to Captain Kim. Would humanity consider a formal alliance with the Concord? Your perspective might be valuable. Before Captain Kim could answer, alarms blared throughout the chamber. A communication officer burst through the doors. High Counselor, we've detected a massive Voidborn fleet heading toward the Arcturus colony. Thousands of ships. They'll arrive in less than 2 days. The room erupted in panic. Arcturus was home to billions of conquered citizens. Our main fleet is too far away, Admiral Tay said grimly. Even at maximum speed, they won't arrive in time. Captain Kim exchanged a look with her officers, then stepped forward. The human fleet could reach Arcturus in 20 hours with our drive system. The room fell silent again. Your tiny fleet against thousands of void-born ships? Asked a Concord commander with disbelief. That would be suicide. Captain Kim's expression remained calm. Numbers don't win battles. Strategy, adaptability, and courage do. She turned to High Counselor Bomi. We'll need access to your weapon schematics and communication protocols, and full tactical command during the operation. Admiral Tay started to object, but Bomi raised her hand again. You have it, she said. Save Arcturus, humans, and the Conquered will be forever in your debt. As the humans left to prepare, Commander, Hana approached Admiral Tay. Do you think they have a chance? The Admiral watched them go, his earlier dismissal replaced by something new, hope. I don't know, he admitted. But I'm starting to believe we severely underestimated these humans. The massive observation deck aboard the Concorde command ship provided a perfect view of the Arcturus system. High Counselor Bomi stood with Admiral Tay and other senior officials, watching as the small human fleet positioned itself between the oncoming Voidborn armada and the heavily populated planets. This is madness, muttered one of the Concorde commanders. 20 human ships against 2,000 Voidborn vessels. They'll be destroyed in minutes. Admiral Tay said nothing, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The human ships had arranged themselves in a formation unlike anything in conquered military doctrine. Instead of presenting a unified defense line, they had scattered across a wide area of space, seemingly random in their placement. They're spreading too thin, Commander Hana observed. The Voidborn will simply bypass them. The communication system crackled to life. Captain Jiwoo's voice came through clearly. Concorde, Command, this is Indomitable. We're in position. All civilian evacuation ships should move behind the moon of Arcturus Prime for protection. High Counselor Bomi leaned toward the communication panel. Captain Kim, your bravery is noted, but perhaps you should consider a strategic retreat. The conquered main fleet will arrive in 30 hours. Arcturus will fall in less than 10 hours without intervention. Jiwoo replied calmly. We're staying. Indomitable out. The first wave of Voidborn ships entered the system, their organic hulls pulsing with eerie bioluminescence. They moved as one massive organism, thousands of vessels coordinated by their hive mind. Against this terrifying display of unity, the scattered human fleet looked pathetically outmatched. Record everything, Admiral Tay ordered quietly. Whatever happens here will be studied for generations. On the main view screen, the lead human ship, the Indomitable, suddenly accelerated toward the center of the Voidborn formation. The alien commanders gasped at what seemed like a suicidal charge. What are they doing? Bomi whispered. The answer came moments later as the Indomitable released hundreds of small, seemingly simple devices that spread out among the enemy ships. At first, nothing happened. Then, as the Voidborn closed in for the kill, the devices activated simultaneously. The effect was immediate and devastating. The perfect coordination of the Voidborn fleet collapsed into chaos as their communication network was disrupted. Ships collided with each other. Some fired weapons in random directions, hitting their own vessels. Incredible, breathed Admiral Tay. They've amplified the technique they used before, but the Voidborn were adaptive. Within minutes, they began to adjust their communication frequencies, regaining some of their coordination. The human ships should have been overwhelmed by the recovering enemy. Instead, the humans executed a series of maneuvers that defied conventional space tactics. Their ships moved in ways that seemed to anticipate the Voidborn's adjustments, always one step ahead. "Look at their formation now," Commander Hana said, pointing to the display. The human fleet had rearranged itself into a new pattern. 5 ships formed the points of a perfect pentagon, with the others positioned along the lines between them. As they watched, the humans activated some kind of energy field that connected all their vessels. "What is that?" asked a conquered scientist, leaning forward to study the readings. The answer became clear as the Voidborn ships that passed between any 2 human vessels suddenly lost power, drifting helplessly in space. The human pentagon had created a trap, and the Voidborn were flying right into it. "They're using our own shield technology," Admiral Tay realized, "but they've modified it to create an energy net instead of a barrier." For the next 2 hours, the observation deck remained silent except for occasional gasps or murmurs of disbelief. The human fleet moved as one perfectly coordinated unit, yet each ship operated with individual initiative when needed. They used simple weapons in complex ways, turning the Voidborn's numerical advantage against them by creating confusion and chaos in their ranks. When the largest Voidborn command ship broke through and headed directly for Arcturus Prime, Captain Jiwoo's Indomitable intercepted it alone. The human vessel, tiny in comparison, should have been instantly destroyed. Instead, they watched as the Indomitable executed a series of impossible maneuvers, evading the massive energy beams of the enemy while targeting specific points on its hull with surgical precision. "They've identified structural weaknesses," Commander Hana said in amazement. "How could they analyze such complex bioarchitecture so quickly?" The Voidborn command ship shuddered, then began to break apart as the Indomitable's attacks hit critical systems. As it exploded, the remaining enemy vessels seemed to lose direction, becoming disorganized and vulnerable. 3 hours after the battle began, the space around Arcturus was littered with the drifting remains of Voidborn ships. More than half. The enemy fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The rest had retreated, and the human fleet? 17 of their 20 ships still functioned, though all showed damage. High Counselor Bomi turned to Admiral Tay, her 6 eyes wide with astonishment. "In all my years," she said softly, "I have never witnessed such a display of tactical brilliance." Admiral Tay nodded slowly. "They took everything we thought we knew about space warfare and proved it wrong. The communication system activated again." Captain Jiwoo's face appeared on the screen, tired but composed despite a cut on her forehead. "Arcturus is secure," she reported. "Request permission to dock for repairs." High Counselor Bomi stepped forward. "Permission granted, Captain, and thank you." Jiwoo nodded simply. "We did what anyone would do." As the transmission ended, Commander Hana looked at Admiral Tay. "No," she said quietly. "Not anyone. Only humans." 3 days after the Battle of Arcturus, Captain Jiwoo stood in the Grand Council chamber of the Concord flagship. The room was filled with representatives from dozens of alien species, all watching her with new respect. Her uniform still showed signs of hasty repairs, but she stood tall and confident. High Counselor Bomi sat at the center of the curved table, flanked by Admiral Tay and other Concord leaders. "The reports from Arcturus have been verified," Bomi announced to the chamber. The human fleet, consisting of only 20 vessels, successfully defended the system against a void-born force 100 times their size. Murmurs spread through the room. Just a week ago, many of these same officials had laughed at the tiny human ships. Captain Kim, Bomi continued, the Concord officially requests a full military alliance with Earth. We offer to share our technology, resources, and protection in exchange for your tactical expertise. Jiwoo exchanged glances with Minho and Doyen, who stood beside her. Earth would be honored by such an alliance, High Counselor. But we have conditions. Some of the aliens shifted, uncomfortably. It was unusual for a less advanced species to present conditions to the mighty Concord. We're listening, Admiral Tay said, his tone respectful. First, equal partnership. Jiwoo stated clearly. Humans must have an equal voice in all decisions. Your technology is centuries behind ours, objected one council member. Yet our tactics saved Arcturus when your technology could not. Doyen responded calmly. Jiwoo continued. Second, a joint military command structure. Human officers must be integrated at all levels. And third, added Minho, complete information. Sharing. We need to know everything about the Voidborn, their biology, their history, their weaknesses. The council erupted in debate. Some members argued hotly against giving so much power to a newcomer species. Others pointed out that traditional approaches had failed against the Voidborn for decades. Admiral Tay raised his hand for silence. Perhaps a demonstration would help the council decide. He turned to Captain Jiwoo. Would you be willing to explain how your fleet defeated the Voidborn at Arcturus? Jiwoo nodded and moved to the center of the room. A holographic display activated, showing the battle from various angles. The Voidborn have always been analyzed as a superior force, she began. You see their numbers and advanced biotechnology as unbeatable. This is your first mistake. She gestured, and the display zoomed in on a single Voidborn ship. Every strength can become a weakness. The Voidborn depend on perfect communication. Disrupt that, and their advantage disappears. For the next hour, Jiwoo explained the human strategy in simple terms. She showed how they had studied Voidborn behavior patterns from Concord battle records and identified vulnerabilities that the aliens had overlooked. You focus on building bigger ships with more powerful weapons, she said. We focus on understanding our enemy and adapting faster than they can. By the time she finished, even the skeptical council members were leaning forward with interest. High Counselor Bomi spoke after a moment of silence. Your approach is different from our traditions, but its effectiveness cannot be denied. She stood, signaling a formal decision. The Concord accepts your conditions, Captain Kim. From this day forward, humans and the Concord are equal allies against the Voidborn threat. The announcement was followed by a week of intense activity. Human officers were assigned to Concord vessels, while Concord engineers began upgrading the human ships with advanced technology. In a private meeting room, Admiral Tay sat across from Jiwoo, reviewing plans for a new joint fleet. Your people adapt remarkably quickly, he observed. Our engineers are impressed by how fast your crews are learning our systems. Necessity has always driven human innovation, Jiwoo replied. When survival depends on it, we learn very quickly. Admiral Tay hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering him. You could have stayed hidden in your corner of the galaxy. The Voidborn might not have found Earth for years. Why risk everything to help us? Jiwoo looked at him thoughtfully. Throughout human history, we've had a saying, all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. She touched the display between them, bringing up an image of Arcturus and its billions of inhabitants. We couldn't watch them die when we had the ability to help. The Admiral studied her with new understanding. The Concord has existed for 10,000 years. We became complacent, believing our technology made us invincible. Perhaps we needed to be reminded that true strength comes from more than just power. Their conversation was interrupted when Commander Hana rushed into the room. Admiral, Captain, we've detected Voidborn activity in multiple sectors. It appears they're gathering for a massive offensive. Jiwoo stood immediately. How long do we have? 3 days, maybe 4, Hana replied grimly. They're targeting the Concord homeworlds this time. Admiral Tay's expression darkened. Trillions of lives are at risk. Even with our combined forces, we don't have enough ships to defend all systems. To his surprise, Jiwoo smiled. Then we won't defend, we'll attack. Both aliens looked at her with confusion. The Voidborn expect us to react as the Conquered always has, setting up defensive positions around important worlds, she explained. Instead, we'll strike directly at their command structure. How? Asked Hana. We don't even know where their central hive is located. We will, Jiwoo said confidently, because for the first time they're afraid. They're gathering their forces because humans scared them. And when people, or creatures, are afraid, they make mistakes. The joint fleet assembled near the edge of Concord space looked unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Massive Concord battleships flew alongside smaller, more agile human vessels. Each ship had mixed crews, aliens and humans working side by side. Admiral Tay stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching as Captain Jiwoo entered with Commander Hana and Minho. The fleet is ready, reported Hana. All ships report combat readiness. Jiwoo nodded and moved to the central tactical display. For 2 days, they had tracked the movement patterns of the Voidborn, looking for the weakness she had predicted. Now they had found it. There, she said, pointing to a distant star system shown on the display. That's where their command center is located. Admiral Tay studied the area. You're certain? It appears to be just another gathering point. Look at the communication patterns, Minho explained. All strategic orders originate from this location. The Voidborn have been careful to hide it, but the data is clear. Jiwoo touched the display, bringing up the battle plan they had developed. We'll split our forces into 3 groups. The main Conquered fleet will appear to attack here, drawing their defensive units away from the command center. Meanwhile, our specialized strike team will approach from behind this nebula, hiding our approach. The plan was daring, some would say foolish, but after Arcturus no one doubted the human tactical abilities. The Indomitable will lead the strike team, Jiwoo continued. Once we break through to the command center, we'll deploy our new weapon. This new weapon had been created in just days, a combination of human ingenuity and Conquered technology. It was designed to disrupt the Voidborn hive mind permanently. Admiral Tay looked across the faces of his officers, both human and alien. We face the greatest threat the Conquered has ever known, but for the first time in decades I believe we can win. Hours later the battle began. As predicted, the Voidborn responded to the Conquered fleet's apparent attack by committing most of their forces to defense. They didn't notice the small group of ships slipping behind their lines. Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, her expression focused as they approached the Voidborn command center. It was a massive organic structure, pulsing with eerie light, the brain of the hive mind. We're detecting increased activity, reported Doyen from the sensor station. They've discovered us. Jiwoo nodded calmly. We expected that. Continue approach. All ships, execute pattern Omega. The strike team spread out in the formation they had practiced. Voidborn defender ships rushed to intercept them, but the human-led vessels moved with unpredictable patterns that confused the enemy tracking systems. Range to target 2 minutes, announced Minho. Suddenly the ship rocked violently. Warning alarms blared throughout the bridge. Direct hit to our engine section, reported an officer. Drive system failing. We won't reach the deployment point. Jiwoo studied the tactical display for a moment, then made her decision. Prepare the weapon for manual detonation. I'll take it in myself using the emergency shuttle. Captain, that's a suicide mission, protested Doyen. The shuttle has no defenses. And no significant energy signature, Jiwoo replied. They'll be focused on our larger ships. I can reach the target. Before anyone could argue further, she added, This is not open for discussion. Minho, you have command of the Indomitable. Complete the mission if I fail. Minutes later, Jiwoo piloted the small shuttle away from the damaged ship. The weapon, hardly larger than a suitcase, sat secured beside her, Around her, the battle raged as the strike team fought desperately to keep the Voidborn distracted. The shuttle slipped between massive enemy ships, occasionally rocked by nearby explosions. Jiwoo flew manually, using the instincts and skills that had made her a legendary pilot on Earth. Approaching optimal deployment range, she murmured to herself, eyes fixed on the huge command structure ahead. Her communication system crackled. Admiral Tae's voice came through. "Captain Kim, our sensors show you're approaching the target alone. What are you doing?" "Finishing the mission, Admiral," she replied calmly. The Indomitable was damaged. This was the only way. There was a pause. "Then the Conquered will not forget this, Captain." "Just make sure it works," Jiwoo said, "and take care of my crew." The shuttle was now dangerously close to the command center. Voidborn defenses had finally noticed the tiny craft and energy beams began to target her. Jiwoo rolled the shuttle, evading the first attacks, but a glancing hit sent it spinning. With effort, she stabilized the craft and aimed directly for a pulsing section of the organic structure. She activated the weapon, setting it for immediate detonation, and pushed the engines to maximum speed. "For Earth and the Conquered," she whispered as the shuttle crashed into the command center. The explosion seemed small at first, just a tiny flare against the massive structure, but then the effect spread, waves of energy pulsing outward through the Voidborn network. Throughout the battlefield, enemy ships suddenly stopped, drifting aimlessly without the guidance of their hive mind. On the Concorde flagship, Admiral Tae watched in amazement as the supposedly invincible enemy collapsed into confusion. "She did it," whispered Commander Hana. "Captain Kim actually did it." 3 days later, in the Grand Council chamber of the Concorde homeworld, Admiral Tae addressed the gathered representatives of 100 worlds. The room was filled beyond capacity, with many standing to hear his words. "Today we announce the end of the Voidborn threat," he began. "After decades of war, their hive mind has been destroyed. The remaining Voidborn ships have been neutralized, or have fled beyond our space." Cheers erupted throughout the chamber. When they subsided, Tae continued, "This victory was only possible because of an alliance between the Concorde and humanity, a species we initially dismissed as primitive and unimportant." He gestured to where Minho, Doyen, and other human officers stood. "We laughed at their tiny fleet until we realized what humans truly are: adaptable, resourceful, and unbreakably determined." Admiral Tae stepped back as High Counselor Bomi moved to the center of the chamber. In her hands, she held a gleaming object, a perfect replica of the Indomitable cast in precious metal. "Captain Jiwoo Kim gave her life to save trillions," she announced. "Her name will be honored throughout the Conquered for all time, and humanity will hold a permanent seat on the High Council from this day forward." She presented the model ship to Minho, who accepted it with solemn dignity. "Captain Kim once told me that throughout human history they were often underestimated," Admiral Tae said as the ceremony concluded. "That will never happen again. The galaxy now knows what we learned, at great cost, that sometimes the smallest fleet can change everything. The end."